welcome on in everybody here to the Chip Shot Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Manny Maradiege. Today is December 3rd, another week down in the NFL. We're going to recap it all here for you guys on today's show. We're going to start off with Monday Night Football, concluding officially Week 13 in the NFL. A not-so-anticipated game turned into a highly watched game there towards the end between the Broncos and the Cleveland Browns, so we're going to break all of that down to start today's show. Also, the news came in on Houston linebacker Azeez Al-Shaair. He received a suspension by the NFL for that hit on Trevor Lawrence. We're going to get into that and whether or not we agree on it, plus some more reactions to a lot of the games over the weekend that we didn't get to cover yesterday, like the Falcons game, the Vikings game, and the Steelers game as well. All of that is coming to you guys on today's show. But before we get to our first topic, I'd like to remind you guys and give you guys the opportunity, really, to get involved with our show. If you got any questions, comments, any opinions you'd like to share during these live shows, please don't hesitate to do so regarding anything on the NFL or maybe just any other question you might have. Please, again, don't be afraid to share your insights and any input you'd like to share during the live shows. It's always a great opportunity for you guys to do that, but to also get a different perspective on anything we're talking about. And if you want to make it absolutely sure that your message stands out and gets featured on today's show and any of the other live shows, there's an easy way to do that just by using the Super Chat feature. Just click the $ at the bottom of the chat box to send in your Super Chat. In this way, it guarantees that your message gets on the air, and it's a fantastic way to support our channel. We rely on your support to keep bringing you the sports content you love, and we appreciate it every time you guys are able to get involved or just share your opinions on anything. So go ahead and let us know what you're thinking. Hit the Super Chat button, and let's keep this show as interactive and as exciting as possible. Again, get involved with the show, get involved with the program, use the Super Chat feature, and just let us know what's on your mind when we're talking about the NFL or a bunch of these topics around the games and just around the NFL in general. So we are now able to move on to the first segment that I have here for you guys, looking at the Broncos and Browns game. Monday Night Football last night, right? Had pretty much everything you could have asked for in a game. We had a lot of big plays, turnovers, quarterbacks putting up big numbers, a lot of touchdowns, obviously, to follow that, and career performances, history being made, and all that sort of thing in a game where you might have looked at it and it might not have been the most anticipated game or the highly sought-after game, but, you know, that all went out the window, right, pretty early in this game. So that was at least a pleasant surprise for anybody that tuned in from the start and stayed with it throughout the end of this game. But it all eventually led to the Broncos defeating the Cleveland Browns 41-32. Thankfully, our prediction came through because we did pick the Broncos to win this game. And it was really their defense, the most reliable part, the most, I think, established part of their team, I would say, making the difference at the end, right? The score doesn't really suggest a defensive matchup, but looking at this game and how it played out, it was really those two pick sixes, obviously, and that interception there at the end that created that separation between the Broncos and the Cleveland Browns in this game. So their defense coming through with them in a very different way this time around. Then you look at what this win does for the Denver Broncos. It moves them to 8-5, and going into their bye week now, according to NFL.com, the Broncos now have a 76% chance to make the playoffs, which would make it the first time that they'd be in the playoffs since 2015. It's been almost 10 years since the Broncos were in the latter stages of the NFL season. Last time they were there, their quarterback was Peyton Manning, so it's obviously been a long time, right? Not only being and getting to the playoffs, but also having a quarterback that's able to get you there. And Bo Nix, we're going to get to him and how well he played, but it wasn't just all about the Broncos getting to the playoffs. It also kind of had to do with them because their former wide receiver, Jerry Jeudy, returned to face his former team after the trade went down in March, I believe, that sent Jerry Jeudy over to the Cleveland Browns. They gave him a nice 3-year deal, and he had an opportunity here to stick it to his team, to his former team, now in his former home. And boy, did he ever, because he recorded a career-high 235 receiving yards, which was a career high for him, obviously, and also the most receiving yards by a former receiver against his former team in NFL history. He surpassed Terrell Owens, who had that record, but now it belongs to Jerry Jeudy. And he also tacked on 9 receptions and a touchdown as well. So it was a very historical moment for Jerry Jeudy. Obviously, playing against your former team, you have that added motivation. So he did everything he could have to not only stick it to his former team, but have a contribution to a winning effort. Unfortunately, they didn't win, but I'm sure that part definitely felt good. But he wasn't the only one on the Browns to make some sort of history. Along with him, Jameis Winston threw for 497 yards just alone in that game yesterday. Nearly 500 yards just coming in a single night game for Jameis Winston is insane. With that, he sets the franchise record for the Cleveland Browns at 497 yards, passing yards, in a single game. I believe it was last held by Josh McCown, but, Jameis Winston blew that out of the water yesterday with also 4 touchdowns, but also 3 interceptions, 2 of which were returned for pick sixes. And along with those performances, right, we mentioned Jameis Winston, Jerry Jeudy. The running game really was just thrown out the window. Their leading rusher was Jerome Ford with 41 rushing yards. Nick Chubb also had the same amount of carries at 9, but he only recorded 21 rushing yards going up against that Denver defense. And outside of Jerry Jeudy, who had 9 receptions, 235 yards and whatnot, Elijah Moore also contributed with 111 yards and 8 receptions, and David Njoku also had 9 receptions, 452, but he added 2 touchdowns as well. But on the other side, I mentioned Bo Nix, and he had a touchdown. He did record 2 interceptions, which made the game pretty close there in the second half, but he almost also had 300 passing yards. He was 6 yards short of that. And in the passing game, it was Marvin Mims scoring a really impressive touchdown. More so the throw was impressive, but, just the 93, 92-yard touchdown in it of itself was very impressive by Marvin Mims. Cortland Sutton did his thing. He had 6 receptions for 102 yards. And Jaleel McLaughlin, he had 14 carries for 84 yards. So they definitely got more of a balanced effort from their offense, more so than the Cleveland Browns did. But overall, you look at how this game played out. It was 10-14 in the first half with about 4 minutes left when we saw one of the first big plays happen. The first big play in this game, I was watching this game while I was doing some other work, and just out of nowhere, it was going kind of like how you'd expect it to. Low scoring, not either team not really doing too much to kind of separate themselves, but then just out of nowhere, Nick Bonito comes in out of nowhere. Jameis Winston has no idea he's even there or that he's looking at the guy that Jameis wants to throw to. Nick Bonito just comes up behind him, takes the ball away, and returns it 71 yards for the first pick six that extends Denver's lead to 10-21 going into halftime. But Cleveland were able to get it back right before halftime, so it was still a 4-point deficit, but it was 17-21 in favor of the Broncos going into halftime. Then, as the second half started, we had, like I mentioned, Marvin Mims, 93-yard touchdown. Then right after that, the fireworks really started to set off because we had that 93-yard touchdown. Then one play later, we had Jerry Jeudy score that 70-yard touchdown. And now we're in the 20s. Now we're in the high 20s, right? It's 25-28 after the Browns convert on a 2-point conversion. So now they're only down 3 points instead of 4. Then later in the back end of the fourth quarter, after Nick Chubb scores a touchdown, the Cleveland Browns are able to go up 32-31 after also the Broncos tack on a field goal. But still, the Browns are up at this point. It's their first lead in the game, and you're thinking maybe they could pull it off here. But Denver managed to get another field goal to get up 32-34, And Cleveland, even still at 32-34, with all the momentum and all the unexpectedness of this game, they had more than enough time to go down and get a field goal. But unfortunately, Jameis Winston threw his second pick six to McMillan, and he returned it, obviously, and now the score is 32-41. And they did add a field goal, if I am correct. No, they didn't. That was all their points they got, but still, it was a 9-point game at that point. And after that pick six, after the demoralization of that, and the fact that you're down 2 scores now, it's almost impossible. But Winston almost had that opportunity to kind of get back into the game. There was a chance there at the end, but ultimately he almost had a third pick six when he tried to throw it into the end zone, but Cody Barton did intercept it, but Jerry Jeudy caught up to him in the end. So a lot of crazy plays in this game. One, I guess just for the Denver Broncos, from an overall perspective of what we can take away from this game, I thought Bo Nix, despite the 2 interceptions, I thought he did a great job of just keeping up with Jameis Winston and just how outrageous of a pace this game was being played at, with how fast everything was happening, the 93-yard touchdown, then a 70-yard touchdown, pick sixes, and still it's only like a 3 or 4 point game. I thought Bo Nix and really the entire offense did a good job of kind of staying composed and keeping everything stable, not just favoring the passing game in this game when it was very easy to. So, the Broncos are a better team than the Browns, at least this year, so you kind of expect that out of them, despite even a rookie quarterback. So I thought they did a very good job of executing that and just kind of remaining on course. And then for the Browns, they are just trying to play spoiler. Jameis Winston's a gunslinger. He really just throws caution to the wind. He's the perfect example of that. But the more I watch him play, the more it kind of just makes me think that he's not like the old Jameis Winston that, leads the league in passing touchdowns or leads the league in passing yards, but has like 30 interceptions. I don't think he's that guy anymore. I know the pick sixes say a different thing, but the more I watch him, I feel like he could be a starting quarterback somewhere. And if that's going to be for the Browns, that would be crazy because Deshaun Watson, what's going to go on with him is a whole different discussion. But I feel like he has kind of earned the opportunity to be a starter somewhere else. And there's plenty of teams that are going to need quarterbacks, maybe even a bridge guy or a guy still on a 1-year deal. But everyone's not going to be able to get Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, right? So I think Jameis Winston's kind of played himself into that conversation, into a 1-2-year contract. And I would like to see him, get another opportunity to really be considered the starter in one of the many organizations that are going to be looking for quarterbacks. So they might not be playing for anything as a team, big picture-wise, but I think I've taken a lot from this and Jameis Winston that he's filled me with a lot of confidence that I think he definitely deserves the opportunity to be starting somewhere. If it's the Browns, that's great. If not, hopefully he can find another home around the NFL. But the game overall was super entertaining, obviously, but we're going to leave that there. And in the meantime, we're going to go to a quick break here. And when we return, we're going to talk about the breaking news that we had today from the NFL regarding Azeez Al-Shaair, a Texans linebacker who had a very scary hit on Trevor Lawrence this past weekend. Pandemonium broke out, obviously, in that game, and there was a suspension that was supposed to come down. And finally, we got the news on that. So we're going to discuss it, give our thoughts on it, and just break down everything that has come after that hit. So we'll be right back. You're listening to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing losing it. The noose it fits some lucid shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
We are back now on the Chip Shot Football Podcast here on December the 3rd, and with all the action that occurred over the weekend, I wasn't planning on talking about the Texans and the Jaguars game for kind of obvious reasons. You know, the Jaguars aren't really in it that much, but Houston did win the game 23-20, but the win was pretty much overshadowed by the moment that we had between Al-Shaair, a Texans linebacker, and Trevor Lawrence, right? A hit by Al-Shaair, a late hit on Trevor Lawrence that knocked Trevor Lawrence, not unconscious, but he hit him pretty hard to the head. I'm sure you guys have seen it, at least by this point now, if you guys have seen it on social media or anything. Al-Shaair had a late hit on Trevor Lawrence, leaving him on the ground for several minutes, and obviously he was taken out of the game. He didn't come back, but after he did apply that hit to him, everything, just went out the window. There was fights. Evan Ingram came in, and that was really the beginning of the initial fight, right, where everybody jumped on Al-Shaair, defending their quarterback, right, how it usually goes, right, how you expect it to go. But right after that, obviously, with all the Jaguars players, defending their quarterback and things like that, Al-Shaair, just based on the nature of the hit, he was obviously going to get ejected from the game, and he was ejected, but then like a smaller confrontation broke out in the end zone as he was trying to leave, and that all kind of was going on for a bit longer until he finally left the field, right? And because of how explicit it looked and the fact that, it left Trevor in that that kind of scary fencing position when you do get hit hard in the head, the nature of that, you obviously anticipated a suspension, a fine of some sorts coming down on Al-Shaair. And I didn't think it would come this quickly, honestly. I didn't think it would come today. But as I was, going through some stuff in the morning, I saw that the NFL officially placed a 3-game suspension on the Houston Texans linebacker Al-Shaair for that hit on Trevor Lawrence. And it was actually NFL Vice President of Football Operations, John Runyon, who issued the suspension and made a public announcement. To spare you guys the time, I didn't have the whole announcement, but I did just take the main points from it, as to why he decided, and I'm sure a couple other people obviously decided, that 3 games was the appropriate length of a punishment for Al-Shaair. And those points that were made in John Runyon's statement were the fact that he delivered a forceful blow to the head and neck area of the quarterback when he had time and space to avoid it. And I agree with that part, based on what John Runyon was saying as one of the main points. So I do agree on that. That part seems fair. He also cited the confrontation after the ejection, right? Kind of not letting it go right after the whole big fight ended. Continuing it afterwards also wasn't a great look. So, that does make sense. And he also, in his words, cited multiple offenses for personal fouls and sportsmanship-related rules violations in recent seasons, as also another reason why Al-Shaair got 3 games instead of maybe 1 or 2 or something like that. He alludes to the fact that it has happened before, the history with Al-Shaair and previous experiences. I think it was in week 2 this year when the Texans played the Chicago Bears. There was an incident on the Bears sideline, I believe, and you basically saw Al-Shaair get up and punch Bears running back Rashad Johnson during that confrontation, and he got like an $11,000 fine for that. I'm pretty sure he didn't get suspended, but he got a fine for that, and they were obviously taking that into account, and I'm sure maybe they looked into it a lot deeper than I did and found other instances of maybe unsportsmanlike related rule violations, as they put it, but that was really the one that jumped out at me just from this year. And they cited that, the history of this player not being an unusual thing to happen related to Al-Shaair. So all of that was taken into account, and that's how they got to the 3 games and suspending him for that amount of time. And yesterday, with everything still pretty fresh, Azeez Al-Shaair did apologize to Trevor Lawrence for the hit, and Trevor Lawrence also did give an update saying that he was fine and everything, and he obviously thanked everybody for the well wishes and things like that. Doug Peterson spoke after the game. D'Amico Ryan spoke after the game, and before I get into D'Amico Ryans, because he said something pretty interesting that really relates to this entire thing, I do want to say that I do agree with the suspension, just in my initial thoughts on it. At first, when I saw it, I thought, it was one of the worst hits. It's one of the worst hits, not in, the case of, oh my God, that was, so dirty, like that player, that hit was the worst thing you could ever do in a football field. Not in that context, just in the context of when a quarterback is sliding, the last thing you want to do is kind of leave your feet and kind of just launch yourself at him head first and things like that. I felt like that was the perfect example of what not to do in those situations. So when I saw it like that in actual speed, I thought they're going to suspend him for a good amount of time. And then I heard some people say maybe 2 games, 1 game, and I'm thinking it's not going to be that bad. But when it actually turned out to be 3 games, I was pretty surprised that they actually went to that length. And according to other reports, Azeez Al-Shaair is going to appeal the suspension, maybe trying to get it reduced to obviously 2 games or 1 game. But yeah, I mean, the 3-game suspension I think is fair, and it's also something that I think, just based on who he is and how animated he is, I don't know his character obviously, but he feels like a very animated, very in-your-face kind of guy. Not to question his character again, but he just appears like that from an outsider's perspective. So they obviously looked further into it, and they felt like this was appropriate. So I find it kind of hard that it would be reduced, because again, this is the last thing the NFL wants to happen, is see one of their stars go down like that. So I don't have high hopes that it's gonna get reduced, but Al-Shaair is still gonna appeal it. So the biggest thing about it though was the fact that he kind of did leave his feet, and the fact that he kind of led also with the forearm. You could make an argument that he, is kind of bracing himself, jumping like that, and it's kind of like a natural reaction to lead and kind of protect your face like that, but it just makes it look worse. And again, I think the most important fact that John Runyon made was that he delivered a forceful blow when he had time and space to avoid it. And some people might say that he didn't, that it was just like a bang-bang play, but if you kind of slow it down, Trevor is going down